In a town like Sunnydale, you must beware of strangers.
Have you ever been with a woman before?
Xander is not in any immediate danger.
Seduction is a powerful weapon. Buffy, next on the WB.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Slade, the Buffyverse Revisited. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Jeremy.
I'm your other host, James.
Woo-wee! And this week we'll be diving into Season 1, Episode 4. And as you guys can probably tell, we have a bit of a, I wouldn't call it a new format, I would call it an extra format. If you would like to go into a little bit of detail there, James.
Yeah, I mean, we've thrown video into the mix. We'll be throwing the video form of the podcast up on YouTube. You know, clips will be available on all our socials: Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. No funny TikTok dances yet, I'm afraid, but maybe one day we'll see. But also the show itself is. We're going to be streamlining it just a little bit. Jeremy and I discussed in between recordings, even though we like delving into all the details of the scenes, we did come to the agreement that we feel like we're transcribing the episode to an extent, more so than reviewing it and giving our takes on the scenes and you know, all that kind of stuff. So starting with this episode, we're going to tweak that a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, this is new for both of us. We're learning as we're going, and we would definitely 100% appreciate feedback from all the listeners. You know, so.
Absolutely on that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So please hit us up.
You know, if you guys liked the first, few episodes where we were painfully detailed and everything, hey, let us know. If you like this version we're going to do today, let us know that. So we'll just go by what you guys like. And podcast, this is our first podcast, so
Right.
We'll just have to play it by ear and see how it goes.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that, Jeremy? Or is that
not really? Other than apologies for my background here. It's my pool, or it's my little workbench area there. But other than that, no, I don't have anything else to add to that.
All right. Well, then let's slide right into this week's episode. Season 1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Teacher's Pet. Episode originally aired on March 25th, 1997. Our director is Bruce Seth Green, not to be confused with
the
Seth
real
Green.
Seth Green, who
right, the actor,
later a star of this show.
Right. He has 11 total credits here in the Buffyverse. 8 episodes of Buffy, 3 of Angel. Some notable episodes of Buffy are The Pack, Nightmares, Some Assembly Required, Halloween, The Dark Age, Ted, one of my favorite episodes, Ted.
Yeah. Yep.
And Phases. Angel, notable episodes, In the Dark, The Prodigal, and The Trial. Actually, all really good episodes of Angel.
Oh, yeah.
Especially The Prodigal and The Trial.
And he also did Hercules, Xena, Sequest, all those kind of 90s fantasy shows.
Yeah, exactly. His non-Buffyverse credits, like you said, Hercules, Xena, Magnum PI, Knight Rider, V, MacGyver.
And one of my favorite shows from the 90s, Babylon 5, he did 4 episodes of that.
He also did a few episodes of Diagnosis Murder, the Dick Van Dyke medical sleuth drama, which
I just saw on here that he also did some Swamp Thing from 91.
Okay, nice. I liked Swamp Thing.
Oh yeah, and MacGyver, and T.J. Hooker.
T.J. Hooker. No one ever remembers T.J. Hooker.
No, not unless you're in our generation or before.
Right. Our writer for this episode, his first episode for what would go on to become quite a prolific catalog within the Buffyverse and outside. David Greenwalt. He has a total of 24 writer credits for the Buffyverse, 8 for Buffy, and 16 for Angel. Notable Buffy episodes include Angel, Nightmares, School Hard, Reptile, Ted, Faith, Hope, and Trick, and Homecoming. Notable episodes of Angel, the premiere episode, City of, Room with a View, hands down. Of course, we'll talk about that much later down the line, but hands down, probably my favorite episode of Angel.
It's probably at least my top 3.
I Will Remember You, great crossover between the two shows. To Sanchu in LA, Judgment, Happy Anniversary, Heartthrob, several others. Non-Buffyverse credits include The Wonder Years, The X-Files, Prophet, Moonlight, and Grimm. Do you have
the recent Grimm?
Yeah.
I always meant to check it out, and I never did. Is it still being made, or?
Oh no, it's not still being made, but I believe it's you can find it on Hulu.
Okay. Yeah.
Did you ever
out at some point?
Did you ever watch Moonlight?
No.
It was the other vampire detective in LA show.
Oh. Well, don't forget about also. Well, it wouldn't have been LA, but can't forget Forever Night.
Forever Night was the original.
Yes. I think they were. I mean, it was shot in Vancouver, but I think they were like in a nondescript city, like a faux city. So
right. Yeah, Forever Night originated the vampire detective genre.
Yes, it did.
Of which there's only been. I'm sorry.
It was cheesy, but
it was cheesy.
It was the original.
Yep. Of which there's only been one truly decent successor, and that, of course, was Angel.
Right. And it was pretty great from the get-go.
Yeah. Our episode synopsis for this week: Xander and most of the males at Sunnydale High are desperately trying to impress the new substitute teacher, Miss French. However, when Buffy witnesses this femme fatale scare off a particularly nasty vampire, she begins to suspect that Xander may be in serious trouble.
Now let me read you my my IMDb little blurb here.
I was hoping you would do this. I would kind of like if this became a weekly thing where I'll give the good synopsis and then you can tell us what IMDb has to say.
I'll give you one that's utterly ridiculous. This one is only one sentence, but it's just, here it is. Buffy's biology teacher is killed by a giant praying mantis that assumes the form of a beautiful substitute teacher. Spoiler alert.
Right. Like, let's just go right into, let's just
go ahead and dive right into it. And, yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, to pick up off of that wonderful Internet Movie Database description,
yes,
we open with our prologue in the bronze. We open in a young lady's mouth as she's screaming. The bronze seems to be in turmoil. We see a vampire advancing on Buffy as she's backed into a pole. She throws a solid right, hits him in the face, and then quickly with a powerful left, but he's not phased. The vamp grabs her, throws her onto the pool table. He leans over, he's going in for the kill, and Xander pops up behind the vamp, grabs him by the shoulders, and pulls him off of Buffy, and quickly slams the vampire's head into the pool table before turning him around and giving him a few good blows to the gut and the face, which point the vampire falls to the floor, knocked out. Buffy's clearly impressed by Xander's performance, tossing him a big smile. Um, Xander gives her his hand to help her off the pool table. Um, as she slides off the pool table, she catches sight of Xander's hand and she asks him um, if he'll still be able to. And he cuts her off and says, "Finish my solo and kiss you like you've never been kissed before." At which point he gives her a wink and turns around and heads over to the stage of the bronze. And as he's heading over, the vampire gets back up and growls, which Xander takes note of, turns around, snaps a leg off of a overturned chair, and launches it at the vampire, hitting him in the chest. At which point the vampire falls dead. Buffy turns her gaze to Xander because she watched this all happen as he jumps back up onto the stage, grabs a guitar, and performs a pretty bitchin' guitar solo as Buffy looks up at him adoringly. And suddenly she says, "You're drooling," to which Xander gets a very confused look. And we cut to science class where Buffy calls for Xander and he wakes up from what has apparently been a very vivid daydream that Xander is having. Buffy is motioning to the corner of her mouth and tells him he's drooling, to which he, wipes his mouth off. And we hear Mr. Gregory, who we were introduced to in last week's episode as the science teacher. He's giving a lecture about ants, insects, but ants in particular. He has asked a question, and he calls on Buffy to answer. He walks over, standing in front of Buffy, waiting for her to give the answer, which Buffy clearly has no idea what the answer is. And she sees Willow miming behind her. Willow is touching Xander, and then Buffy says to Mr. Gregory that ants identify themselves to each other through touch, and Willow proceeds to mime sniffing Xander, to which Buffy says NBO, which is not the right answer.
Sort of right.
Sort of right, yeah. Dr. Gregory corrects her. He's like, that would be touch and smell, Miss Summers. And then he says, "Is there anything else Miss Rosenberg would like to tell you?"
Yeah.
At which point the bell rings and Dr. Gregory tells them their homework for the night and asks if he can see Buffy for a moment. We cut to everyone else has left the class. Dr. Gregory and Buffy are talking. And Dr. Gregory, he basically tells her, Principal Flutie showed me your record. And
which we found out in the pilot episode, her record is not good.
Right. And he tells her, you had some problems at your last school. And he's like, I can't wait to see what you do here. And Buffy is basically like, yeah, destructive girl, wonder what I'll destroy next, or something to that effect. And he basically is like, no, it's like you've got a great mind, you're a quick thinker, and it would be amazing to see what you'll do here if you actually apply yourself, and keep up with the homework and whatnot. and he tells her not to let Principal Flutie or anyone else's negative opinions of her, affect her or determine what she's doing. And he's like, let's take that previous transcript and make them eat it. Show them what you can do. And she agrees, and he reminds her of the homework and leaves. Buffy leaves. Dr. Gregory proceeds to keep rummaging through some slides, turns off the lights, and sits down to look through the slides, at which point we see a door behind him slowly creep open, and we get a POV from whatever it is creeping up on him, and we see a long serrated insect-like leg wrap itself around Dr. Gregory's neck, and his glasses fall to the ground right before he does. And that is the end of our prologue.
Dr. Gregory is no more.
Yeah.
And that was our cold open.
It was our cold open. I think it was very evident by Buffy's reaction to Dr. Gregory's talk that there are not a whole lot of adult authority figures in her life at this point, or possibly in recent memory of hers, that have encouraged her the way that Dr. Gregory just did.
Yeah, I mean, because she seems to be very caught off guard and very happy about it.
Right.
Very like, wow, no one's ever, believed in me like this,
Right.
And,
I think
yeah, I'm starting to wonder what's with Mom.
well, I think from the first 3 episodes, especially last week's, as we pointed out, I don't think Joyce, I don't want to say she's not hands-on, but I feel like her interest right now in Buffy is strictly in making sure Buffy doesn't throw their lives into turmoil and upheaval again.
Yeah, like she's pretty self-absorbed.
Right. I don't think there's a whole lot of, you're intelligent, you're a good student, this and that. And I think from Giles's perspective, his main interest is making sure Buffy is capable of performing her duties as the Slayer.
Yeah, and surviving and not being hurt.
Right.
It's clearly already taken to her,
Right. So I think as
father figure.
Right. So I think as far as adult authority figures in her life go, she doesn't have anyone that's encouraging her to be a good student and telling her that she has the capability to do that.
Yeah.
So.
And it's probably also a good thing she's met Willow, because Willow, just in the first, these first few episodes, it's clear that Willow is uber smart,
right?
Takes school very seriously, and so yeah, it's probably a good thing. And I want to go back to I know this is silly to go back to, but when Xander breaks the chair leg or whatever that it was off and throws it at that vamp, did you happen to see? Just go back and watch it sometime if you want, or our listeners go back and check it out. And it just seems it looked like he had never thrown an object in his life. It was just I rewound it a few times and watched it, and I was like, the hell? But I found that funny.
You would
silly.
No, you would think that for someone being in their own daydream, that they're
yeah, that he would be a lot more skillful.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Because he definitely was not.
Right.
But yeah, so bouncing on to the next scene as we come back out of commercial, or what would have been a commercial. We're back at the Bronze. But this is actually the real bronze. No more Xander daydreams. There's a goofy 90s alternative band playing derpy music. Did you happen to make note of who or look into who they were or
I did. This is give me 1 second here.
do 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 do. I'll go on and then we'll come
Yeah,
back.
go ahead.
So anyway, at one point Xander walks up and he's listening to the band and bop it around and looks at the lead singer / guitarist and like goes like hey, and the guy just totally blows him off, like gives him a look like what no. And Xander's like okay, so he makes his way over to I'm gonna call it the bar, but obviously this is an under 21 club, but it we'll call it the bar. He makes his way over to the bar and there's a couple of clearly varsity douchebags sitting there talking about girls and their conquests and whatnot. And Xander tries to kind of, boast about his own conquests, and it goes over like a lead balloon. It's clear that it's kind of clear to me that they're all three of them are full of it. But Xander, we pretty much know Xander's full of it, but he's trying to,
Right. I
in.
don't know that upon original viewing, I would have guessed that anyone other than Xander was full of it, just for the fact that Blaine there is he's a varsity football player, so
Yeah.
you would kind of expect he's got
telling tales.
Yeah. But anyway.
Well, then Xander spots Willow and Buffy, and he's like, he thinks, watch this is my chance to. So he's like, sorry, duty calls. Goes over to them, throws his arms around both of them, and he's like, Buffy's kind of like, what's this? And he's like, yo, just playing along, these guys, blah blah blah, and Willow, who's we know has a massive crush on Xander, is like, we'll show them, and she grabs him up real tight and is hanging on, and he turns back and looks at him like, yeah.
Right.
It's kind of silly, but Buffy happens to look up, and who does she spot over in the dark corner of the club? It's
tall,
Angel.
dark, and mysterious.
That's right. Tall, dark, and Angel. So she works her way over there, and he's wearing a wife beater and a leather jacket. This is definitely the 90s.
Well, I would also like to point out that we don't actually realize he's wearing a wife beater until he takes off the leather jacket.
Well, I knew it right away just from
Did you?
Just from the cut of the neckline.
Gotcha.
I was like, yeah, he's definitely wearing a wife beater. That's definitely a t-shirt.
I'm clearly not the fashionista you are, Jeremy.
Yes, exactly. I'm quite the fashionista, I tell you. So, and he, for no reason, it's not like she shivers or anything, but all of a sudden he's like, well, you look cold. So he takes off his leather jacket to show his, supremely sculpted bod and puts it around her. And it's obviously 340 sizes too big for her, but whatever. And she's like, oh, and you know how that goes, especially in the 90s. Then he gives her this vague, just out of nowhere, he just gives her this vague warning about and says, he's coming. Don't let him corner you. Don't give him a moment's mercy. He'll rip your throat out.
Well, it's not without a moment's notice. When he gives her his jacket, she catches sight of 3 deep wounds on his arm.
I totally missed that.
Yeah, she catches sight of 3 deep wounds on his arm and asks him what happened. Yeah.
Wow, I must have been note taking when that happened. Wow, totally missed that. So yeah, he says he's coming. Don't let him corner you. Don't give him a moment's mercy. He'll rip your throat out. And she's like, huh? And he just bails, and she still has his jacket. End of scene. So, well, I'll jump into the next scene. We're back at the high school, Sunnydale High. Buffy and Giles are walking up to school. It's obviously, the morning. And she's telling him about this weird, vague warning she got from Angel, and he's like, "Huh, okay, well, I'll see if I can look into that and see if anything rattles around, any bells get rung." And Willow and Xander meet up with them, and um, Xander happens to mention, like, haha, I didn't do my homework, but it doesn't matter because, Mr. Gregory's not here today.
Right.
And Buffy's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I mean, like, he's missing. Like, not that he's not there, he's missing. And she's like, I don't know what the word is, but she's clearly troubled by it. She's like, missing? She had just saw him the day before, and he'd given her all this encouragement, so she's clearly troubled by this. But then all of a sudden, Xander's just like, and blown away, and the camera pans over, and you see this very attractive, beautiful woman, obviously a woman, not a school age person, comes walking up, dressed a little swanky, I would say, maybe a little risque for a
high school teacher.
For what we find out, she's going to be a substitute teacher for
Right.
Mr. Gregory. And Xander can't form words, and he's just blah 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 blah, and she's asking him, basically, can he show her where the science room is? And he's like, oh yeah, I go there every day. And then he looks at Buffy and Willow, and he's like, where is it? And they don't want to help him out. They think it's funny, so they just both shrug at him. And then Blaine, the varsity douchebag, pops in from behind. Oh, I'm going there. It's real close to where I'm going. I can take you there, no problem. And so off they go, and that's the end of the scene. But Xander just kind of watches, like,
Yeah. Something when the scene first opens, and Buffy and Giles are talking, Giles says he called him Fort Guy, and Buffy's like, that's all Cryptic Guy said, Fort Guy. And Giles says, well, I think there's too many guys in your life.
Yeah.
And he laughs to himself. Like,
Yeah.
he clearly thought that was very amusing.
Yeah, he's
And,
like,
right, and I did too. To backtrack a little bit, the music in the Bronze,
yes, go back to that,
was a band called Superfine, a song called Already Met You, which actually made it onto the BTVS soundtrack, which I play at least once a day. I won't even lie. It gets cycled through at least once a day. I listen to it in the background while I'm working. They are also the band that's playing in the Bronze at the end of this episode.
right?
It's a song called Stoner Love.
Stoner Love, okay.
That one did not make it onto the Buffy the Vampire Slayer soundtrack, but they were both featured on their LP Stoner Love, distributed by Fish of Death Records in 1997.
Fish of Death.
Yes.
Something tells me neither the record label nor the band still exist.
Yeah, probably not. Probably
I think I would be willing to wager on that.
Yeah.
And I'm not a betting person, so.
So that takes us back to the science class. Buffy and Willow and some other students are walking in, and Buffy and Willow are joking with each other. And Buffy notices something on the ground and crouches down and picks up Dr. Gregory's broken glasses. And Willow's all like, what's wrong? And Buffy's like, well, if Dr. Gregory dropped his glasses, why wouldn't he pick them up? Buffy's first clue that something is amiss with this situation.
Something is amiss.
So then our substitute teacher is introducing herself. Her name is Natalie French. she'll be sitting in for Dr. Gregory while he's out.
And did you take notice of how just odd her accent was?
I did.
We should make note here, because I will. Because she, going back into our Highlander nerddom, she had been a guest star on one of probably my all-time favorite episodes of Highlander, the series. The episode title was The Valkyrie. And I noticed in IMDb that they were both released in the same year, both that episode and this episode. Apparently, Highlander was filmed first because it did come out first. But in that show, you hear her natural speaking voice, her natural accent. She's a Dutch South African, but clearly on this show and in this episode, somebody said, "Hey, can you kind of try a nondescript, maybe Americanish accent?" And she does. And sometimes it sounds fine, and then other times she struggles with it.
Right.
So yeah, I made note of that.
The actress's name is Museda Vander.
Mm-hmm.
And she's another character actress. Like you said, she was on Highlander. Probably, yeah, one of my favorite episodes of that show. But again, she's one of those character actors where if you've watched television and movies, you've seen her. Like, she's popped up somewhere.
Oh yeah. Especially in the 90s. I mean, she was in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Particularly when they were trying to fit that sexy foreign seductress vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So she's introducing herself. All the young men in class are clearly captivated by her. Buffy asks her if she knows when Dr. Gregory is coming back. She says she doesn't. But she says she's going to pick up where Dr. Gregory left off, and it's her understanding that they were in the middle of insect life. And she picks up a praying mantis in a clear plastic display box. And she talks about how they're fascinating and they're forced to live alone. And she asks the class if anyone can tell her why. And then singles out Buffy. To which Buffy says the words "bug ugly" come to mind. And Natalie doesn't take that very well.
No, not well at all.
Yeah, she seems very offended by that, which is a little weird, I thought. But again, if you're into entomology, maybe you're not happy by that characterization. But she says no, it's because they're cannibals, to which of course solicits an ew from pretty much everybody in the class. She says it's not their fault. They're built that way. And she throws out some statistics. I think she says there's over 1,800 species of mantis worldwide. They're all female, and they're all more aggressive than the male. With Blaine chimes into Buffy, nothing wrong with an aggressive male. Female, sorry. But also I would like to say, when Blaine introduced himself in the previous scene, he gave his name as Blaine Mall. And you cannot convince me that Blaine Mall isn't somewhere David Greenwalt or someone else in the writer's room spent their weekends like playing arcade games.
Blaine Mall.
Yeah. Like you cannot convince me that is not an actual place.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah.
Like,
come to think of it.
They were going there and grabbing some Annie Ann's.
I never even made the connection.
Like, they were going there and grabbing some Annie Ann's pretzels and then heading over to the arcade.
And then taking a break and hitting the Cinnabon.
Right, exactly.
I mean, you had to.
So um, Natalie keeps going on about mantises. She talks about how the California mantis in particular lays her eggs and then finds a mate to fertilize them. And she's at this point approached Xander and is giving him a very pointed look, bedroom eyes, if you will. So she
Can you
makes
tell us what that looks like, James? Bedroom eyes?
no, I
Oh,
can't.
okay, okay.
I can't.
Okay.
No. I mean, we've all seen them. I mean,
Have we now?
uh, she makes her way back to the front of the class, puts down her notebook, and then she offers that they should make some model egg sacs for the science fair, and asks who'd like to help her with that after school. And all the boys raise their hands.
Literally every male wants to help.
Every male in the class raises their hands.
Just by the way,
Uh-huh.
how many substitute teachers have you had in your life? A good amount, you would say.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
How many came in and was like, okay, you like say for a science class, like, okay, and I'm going to take over the science fair stuff too.
You know, I thought that too.
It's just like she came in and she's like, okay, I'm the new permanent teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was going to kind of bring that up after we were done and we were kind of talking about the episode and stuff. Like, it doesn't, no substitute does that.
Yeah. Every substitute I ever had growing up hardly even talked. They just sat at the desk.
Right.
With just like a book, reading a book, and basically we just had to shut up and sit there for the period, and
right.
That was it.
Just the fact that she like was gonna pick up from his notes was like, to me, was like, wait, what? Like,
yeah, exactly.
No, every time I've had a substitute teacher, it's been like you said, they come in, they're, they will, tell you to silently read some chapters from your textbook, or they'll throw on a movie depending
or something,
on what the class is. Because, and it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, and any teachers that might happen to be listening, please let us know. I believe that there's some sort of substitute curriculum that most teachers probably build into their regular learning.
Yeah.
Like if I happen to call in sick and we have to have a substitute, this is what the substitute is directed to do for the day.
Yeah, and it's video, or tell them to read chapters, or
exactly. And most of the time it's like, tell them to read chapters from their book or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway,
this lady just comes in like, hey, I'm Bill Nye the Science Guy, and I'm here to really show you how to do some sciencing.
Right. We're going to learn about mantises, and we're going to
make fake egg sacs.
Fair. Right.
I was just, I don't know. Like, okay.
I would like to point out, and granted, this episode aired 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I looked into it. Her 1800 species of mantis facts, and as of today, that number is 2,400 species, categorized into 15 different families. So just a little mantis.
How are there more, like, how are more species? I never mind, because my brain doesn't, never mind.
Well, so species break down into familia, family.
Right.
So you're always going to have more species than you do families.
Okay.
So species.
Yeah. So moving on. Yeah, I love science, but I don't know shit about it.
So, moving on, we find ourselves in the cafeteria, and Buffy and Xander and Willow are in line. They're having hot dog surprise for lunch.
Which I don't even know what that. Have you ever heard of that? I've never heard of that.
I've heard of it. I couldn't tell you what's in it.
Is that like beanie weenies or something? You know, or
I would imagine it's probably some sort of hot dog and maybe macaroni concoction.
Oh, okay. See, I was gonna Google it, and then I spaced it, and so I was like, well, maybe James has heard of it. Maybe he knows what it is. And
yeah, like I said, I've heard
both
of it.
Midwest guys, so I don't know that either one of us has ever, you know.
Yeah.
Never heard of hot dog surprise. I think that alone, I'd be like, nope. Don't want no surprises with my hot dogs.
Right, and that's pretty much what Willow says.
Yeah, she does, because she's like, aren't hot dogs already a surprise, like on their own?
Right. So they're in line, and Xander starts to, his thoughts are wandering, but he is speaking to Buffy and Willow, and he's like, I wonder what she sees in me. You know, it's probably my good looks and smoky magnetism.
Yeah, he's very magnetic.
Right, and of course,
look at him, and then when it wouldn't stick, she's no, nothing.
And of course, both the girls are, giving him the side eye, and he tells them, "You wouldn't understand.
You're too young to understand."
Right.
What an older woman would see in a younger man.
Right. And Buffy is like, no, I understand. Younger men are too dumb to wonder why an older woman can't find someone their own age, and too desperate to care about all the surgical improvements.
Yeah. And he's like, what surgical improvements?
Right. So they Blaine shows up, and he's just lobbing food onto his cafeteria tray, and he's all like, got a carb up for my one-on-one with Miss French,
And I never got a shot of the damn hot dog surprise. I kept wanting to see it on someone's tray, but
there is the opening scene is the cafeteria lady scooping it out.
Oh, okay. So that was the hot dog.
Yeah, that was the hot dog.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah,
I'm stupid.
It didn't look appetizing, and it could just be the poor quality of the DVD transfers or film transfers.
That's what I was going to say, was that it's
Hulu.
This first season, the transfers, grainy and dark.
Right.
And,
you can't really tell what it is, but in my mind, without looking it up, it, like I said, it's some sort of hot dog and macaroni concoction.
Ooh, I thought it was bad at my cafeteria. Ooh.
So yeah, Blaine's all, I got to carb up for my one-on-one with Miss French, and he's giving Xander some crap, like, oh yeah, yours is tomorrow, right? That's right. You came in second. I came in first. Guess that's what they call natural selection. And Xander's like, I guess that's what they call a rehearsal. Which good on
Xander always has the best zingers and one-liners.
Right. So they proceed through the lunch line, and they're going over to grab some utensils or something, and Buffy runs smack dab into Cordelia as she's walking into the cafeteria. And
she's
of course,
like, excuse you.
Right. Of course, it must be Buffy's fault. It cannot be Queen Cordelia's.
No, not Queen Cordelia.
Error. And she proceeds to walk right behind the cafeteria counter, flashing a piece of paper, and says it's her medically prescribed diet that her doctor sends in special every day, and she's going to grab it, and she'll be out, as soon as she possibly can. She opens the refrigerator and lets out a scream. A really good scream, by the way. Charisma Carpenter on this one in particular, up there, Scream Queen levels.
Oh yeah, Charisma Carpenter's fantastic. Because the way she's always played Cordelia was 100%, spot on.
Right. She screams, and we get a look inside, and it's a headless body.
What headless body is it?
Well, as we find out when Buffy and Willow and Xander run over to check out the commotion, it is Dr. Gregory.
Dr. Gregory. No, Dr. Gregory.
Yes.
No.
Our trio is stunned as Cordelia stammers in the background, asking where his head is. Where's his head?
Yeah.
And that will take us to the library. And what's going on there?
Well, Buff and Will are sitting on the steps, and Buffy's clearly traumatized. She's clearly traumatized by this. You can see some tears on her cheeks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, we're 4 episodes in, and she took the Jesse thing to heart in our premiere, but this is the first time we've seen her like visibly shaken by.
And I don't
something.
think it's necessarily the headless body. I think it's because of who it was.
Right.
That this person had just shown her encouragement and taking an interest in her.
Right.
And
given her some respect that other people,
adults especially,
haven't shown her. Yeah. 100%. That's why it got to her. Yeah, definitely.
So it's really gotten to her, and Giles has gotten a glass of water and hands it to her, and he's like, "Here, drink this." And she's like, "No, thank you." But she takes it and drinks it as she's saying, "No, thank you," because she's zoned out. Xander's just totally creeped out by the whole seeing a headless body thing, because he didn't really know, the teacher, or really probably care that much.
Right.
But seeing the headless body was a real creep out factor for Xander. And Giles is upset because he's like, I really liked him. He was a good guy. And Willow's like, yeah, we got to find out who did it and stop them.
And she of the group, she appears to be the least affected by what happened.
But she also seems to be the one who's like, we need to find who did this.
Right.
And put a beating on them,
She's it's almost like kind of she's I don't want to say holding the group together, but she's definitely keeping them to task right now in this particular moment.
I would say she's kind of the foundation right now because Buffy's just really down about it.
Right.
So she's kind of picking up the slack there, and I think it's her that asked. Was it her? I don't remember who it was that asked. Where's the head? Like what's the explanation there? Where's the head?
Yeah, that was Xander. He says, I'm going to ask the question no one wants to hear.
Yeah.
What did they do with the head? And Willow's like, you're right. I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah. But then it makes them all kind of think like, yeah, why was it just a body and no head? So, Giles I think his mind immediately goes to the Master, who's our big bad of this season. We met him in the first episode and the second episode. And I think his mind just automatically goes to the Master, and because he says, there was a story that there was a vampire who offended the Master and cut off his hand in penance, and is now got a device on, and so they all go and they start talking about this, which relates to what Angel had told her in the Bronze. And they're like, okay, it's got to be this guy that Angel was saying was coming, and
right.
He's got some kind of weird attachment to his stump, and maybe he cut the head off, But they're still like, but where's the head? Is he keeping heads? What's the deal? And so they decide. So they're like, what did they put a fork on there? Like, what? So they start calling him Fork Guy, and but then Buffy's like, okay, but Dr. Gregory, that's the science teacher. I don't know if we mentioned he was a doctor.
Well, I've been referring to him as Dr. Gregory. So.
Oh, okay. But but she's like, his blood wasn't drained, so it wasn't a vampire. Why would a vampire just cut off his head and not drink his blood or anything? So there's,
Right.
they're all kind of like, So Giles still thinks Fort Guy is the likely suspect, so he wants to do some research and do some digging. And Buffy's like, no, now what was the name of that park that the guy that the guy was found in, the dead body? This is how they all found out about Fort Guy to start with.
Right, because Giles mentioned that someone had been attacked in Weatherly Park.
Right, and like lacerated and
Right.
blah blah blah.
Right.
And so, he tells her, and he's like, but he does not want her going hunting right now. He said, now is not the time. We don't know what's out there. He's clearly concerned for her well-being, and he doesn't want her hunting right now, especially by herself.
Right.
And she's like, okay, I promise I won't go. I promise I won't go hunting. And the very next scene, she's hunting. She walks up to the park, does her little Slayer jump right over the fence, and kapow, she's in the park.
Actually, so she doesn't Slayer jump.
Really?
Yeah, I actually had it in my notes. Buffy doesn't Slayer jump over the fence. She climbed the fence.
Huh. Well,
Yeah.
I think I had my head down at the time and I was taking my notes, and I just assumed, because it seemed fairly quick, so I thought, oh, Slayer jump.
Yep. I made note of that because every time we've seen her encounter a fence thus far, she Slayer jumps the
Slayer
fence.
jumped it. Yep. Okay, so she didn't Slayer jump, but she is now inside the park. And it's, it's nighttime, it's dark, it's creepy, crickets, ooh, spooky. And all of a sudden somebody grabs her out of the dark, and it's a drunk hobo, and says she shouldn't be out here, it's dangerous. And she's like, yeah, and you just grabbed me in the dark, thanks. She keeps going through the park. She works her way over to a park bench, and there's another hobo laying there on the park bench sleeping. I like the word hobo, so I always use that for homeless people. It's probably offensive, but hobo's old, and everybody understands what a hobo is.
Right.
So he's asleep on the bench, snoring. So she's like, okay, well, he's okay. And she works her way over a little further, and she finds some brush that clearly doesn't belong where it's kind of stacked up. And she begins to move it and kind of uncovers basically like a little tunnel entrance to where, who knows, because suddenly Fort Guy jumps out at her. Rawr! A vampire that basically looks like he has a big fork driven into his stump from where he had cut his hand off from. So they start duking it out. Neither one of them really has an advantage. They're kind of both kicking each other's butt a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then this one, this is the part that I was just like, what? All of a sudden you hear cops. I think they say freeze or something like that. Or what are you doing down there? And they have flashlights and they have their guns pulled out. And and the vampire Fort Guy, he's like, oh, I don't know. So he bails like immediately. And then she's hot on his trail, and the cops are like, I heard him down there. Let's go down there. And Buffy and Fort Guy are long gone. But the cop thing,
I would guess that since there's a known homeless presence there,
and since there was just an attack there, what was it, a couple of nights
ago, then there's probably an elevated police presence in the park.
Because I was just thinking, why would they just suddenly show? Okay, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, I'm stupid. So she's hot on Fort Guy's trail, like I said, chasing him. He gets to the fence. He jumps over. Or he sees a lady, walking by, with, looks like she has a bag of groceries in each arm. So he's like, he's probably thinking dinner. So, and not from the groceries.
Not from the groceries.
So he quickly scales the fence and jumps over. And he's coming up behind her and gets pretty close. And she slowly turns to face him. And who is it?
It's Miss French.
Miss French. and he immediately like recoils. He's just like, what? And he's just clearly put off by this person or something, some type of aura.
I feel
Pheromone.
like if he wasn't deathly allergic to them himself, he would have thrown up a cross at that point.
Or he might have thrown up in his mouth. I don't know.
Right.
But it was just like he was totally freaked.
Yeah.
So he just spins around, runs away from her, over onto the other side of the street, onto the other sidewalk, pulls a manhole cover up, jumps down in the manhole, and pulls the cover back over, and he's gone.
He's gone. He Ninja Turtled that shit.
Ninja Turtled because he was totally creeped out.
Yeah.
And Miss French just kind of watches this, and then she kind of cracks a small smile and turns around and continues to walk away. However, who saw all of this occur? That's right.
Our
Buffy
Slayer.
Summers. She was watching from the fence, and she's like, the fuck?
Yeah.
A vampire? What?
She's like, bro.
She's like, vampire turned down the hill? What? So
right.
Something's going on with old Miss French.
Right.
I think this is kind of her. I would say this is probably her first inkling that Miss French is not all she seems to be.
Right. That something's not kosher with
something
Miss
is amiss with Miss French.
Right. But maybe she had garlic in the bag.
Yeah, she could have had garlic. Maybe she had a big cross on that we couldn't see on in the camera shot.
Right.
Maybe she smelled really bad. Maybe she had fallen into a sewer treatment retention pond. I don't.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
right.
There could be explanations.
Right. But Buffy is the Slayer, so she immediately jumps to worst case scenario.
Right.
Is that Miss French is potentially a threat worse than a clawed vampire.
Yeah, worse than Fort Guy.
Worse than Fort Guy. Which,
where do we go from there?
James? Well, I was just going to say, which she then the following morning takes to Giles in the Sunnydale High Library, and she's telling him all about how she went out last night to hunt,
even though she promised not to.
Right. And he's like, so you did exactly what I told you not to,
and that you promised you wouldn't.
Right. And she's all like, yeah, I lied, I'm a bad person, let's, you know what, there's bigger things that's at stake here.
It. Yeah.
Right. She's trailing behind him as they walk into his office. She tells him, I ran into Fork Guy. He had a big old claw in his hand. We threw down a little bit, and he ran off, and he ran into the substitute teacher, Miss French. And, she asks if Giles knows Miss French. And Giles is like, yeah, she's lovely. And he's like, in a common, extremely well proportioned way.
And he gets a little sly grin. I mean, he's clearly a little like taken with Miss French.
Right, like every other male
on the campus, apparently.
Right. And he's putting away some files. And Buffy's like, yeah, I'm chasing this dude down, and Miss Well Proportioned is heading home, and he takes one look at her, and he turns tail and boot scootin' boogies the fuck out of there.
Oh, boot scootin' boogie, okay.
And Giles is confused, like, he ran away? Like, what? And Buffy tells him that Fort Guy was petrified. Like, he was not having any part of Miss French. So Buffy's like, what? You've got a vampire that can shave with his hand, and what's that gonna be afraid of? And right. Giles is like, Not a whole lot. Certainly not a substitute teacher. And he's like, you should probably keep an eye on Miss French. And she's like, I agree. So I should get to class. And then we are in the halls of Sunnydale High. She's making her way out of the library and hightailing it over to science class. And she runs into Principal Bob Flutie. And he's all like, hold up. You saw Dr. Gregory, right? And she's like, you mean in the cafeteria? And he's all like, no. I don't want to hear anything about him being dead or anything like that.
Or decapitated. Don't use any D words.
Right. And he's like, you saw it, so you need to go down this way, and starts pushing her down another hallway. And she's like, I'm going to be late for biology. He's like, I don't care. You need to see a counselor. Everyone that, witnessed this needs to see a counselor. And he's like, I'm always here. I'm always here if you need a hug. And then like Buffy doesn't even like move to hug him, and he recoils, and he's like, but not a real hug. We
don't do touching.
We don't do touching in this school. Like, but you definitely need to see the counselor, and
or the Jedi Council,
and start the healing. And forces her to sit down outside the counselor's office. And she's there, and she's looking bummed, and we hear Cordelia from inside the counselor's office, and she's monologuing about how, she doesn't really know what to say about the situation. She's like, 1 minute you're living your normal life, and then all of a sudden, who's in the fridge? She's like, it really gets to you. I haven't eaten anything since yesterday. And she's like, I think I've lost like 7.5 ounces. And she's like, way quicker than that diet that quack doctor put me on. She's like, not that I'm saying a teacher should die every time I need to lose weight, but you have to look on the bright side.
Yeah.
But she's like, like how even Mercedes still has,
and she's just like,
yeah. And we cap it off with Cordelia saying, like how even used Mercedes still have leather seats.
Right.
And then we are in the science class where Miss French is giving a quiz, and she's telling everyone, eyes straight, pay attention to your own test. She walks up behind Xander, and she leans close, and she whispers in his ear, I think you meant pollination for number 14. And she puts his hand on his shoulder and says, I'll see you after school. And Xander's clearly down bad. Like, he's feeling all types of ways right now.
Yeah. He's already messed his pants.
We cut to the hall. We see Buffy running up to the classroom, and she peers through the little window, and she's like, fantastic, pop quiz. And we cut back inside, and we see Miss French straighten up all of a sudden as Buffy's looking through the window, and she slowly starts to turn her head a full 180 degrees. Buffy is seeing this all, and her eyes just go big as saucers with amazement, and she quickly rolls away from the window so not to be seen.
Yeah. Then we're in the library, and Buffy and Willow are walking into the library, and you hear, and Buffy says, I'm talking full on exorcist twist. And Willow goes, ouch. They're not, I guess Willow was kind of like, do you just mean turned her head toward? And so Buffy's trying to, illustrate. No, I'm talking like The Exorcist. Spun her head around 180 degrees while the rest of her body stayed the other direction. So, uh,
And for anyone unfamiliar with The Exorcist,
yeah.
feel free to go Google it.
Yeah. Feel free to go Google it. And I think it's Willow. I didn't mark it down. Says that Blaine, the varsity douche, was with her yesterday after school and then not here today. Was with Miss French.
Yeah, that was Buffy pointed
Oh,
that
it was
out.
Buffy that said that. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're kind of talking about her, and at this point, Buffy knows now. She just 100% knows that something is up with Miss French. She's clearly not human. And she's like, well, whatever she is, I'm going to be ready for her. And so she goes up and is going to disappear into the book catalogs area, and turns around and comes back and says, where are the books on bugs? Because she, at this point, I think has kind of put it together in her mind that she's potentially some type of bug.
Right.
So then the next scene, we zoom in back into the biology class, and Miss French is sitting at her desk putting some mayonnaise on some pieces of bread, apparently going to make herself a sandwich. In walks Xander, and they're having a little back and forth, and she's like, oh, Xander, I've made such a terrible mistake, and could you ever forgive me? And he's like, hey, my middle name is Forgiveness, and then he's like, actually, it's Lavelle, but please don't ever tell anyone that, ever. So we now know his full name is Alexander Lavelle Harris.
Yes. This is actually the first time as well, we learned Willow's last name. In the first science scene.
Yes.
Dr. Gregory does address her as Miss Rosenberg.
Miss
and
Rosenberg.
That's the first time we've gotten Willow's full, at least her first name and her surname.
Indubitably. So anyway, she says, what I've done is I've forgotten, all the supplies to make these fake eggs, the paper mache and paints and what have you. And she's like, how about you come to my house tonight? And Xander's like, whoa. And she's like, yeah, how's 7:30 work? And he's basically like, well, hell's yeah. And he's all, what? And he leaves after it appears she jotted down her address and handed it to him, because she handed him a little slip of paper. So I'm going to assume that's her address.
Right.
So he's like, okay. And then he leaves and closes the door, and then he's out in the hallway, and he's just like, yes, he's super,
yeah, he's stoked, fists in the air.
Oh yeah.
He flashes back to his guitar solo in his daydream.
Yep. We flash back briefly back inside the room, and she goes back to her sandwich preparation that she had already, as I had said, she'd already put some mayo on some pieces of bread. Then she opens a little container, and what is it? Crickets.
It's fucking crickets, man.
It's fucking crickets. And she dumps out all these live crickets onto this piece of bread, and then folds it over and takes a big, crunchy, juicy bite out of it. Yummy.
Now, I'm not. So we're gonna detour just for a second here. So welcome to James Revisited. No, okay. I'm not particularly squeamish.
Yeah.
I love horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'll watch pretty much any horror movie, and it will unfaze me, even like some people can't watch that kind of stuff while they're eating, like never bothered me. Blood, guts, I cannot, and this scene grossed me out. I cannot watch. Well, I can't say I can't, but it gives me the heebie-jeebies to watch anything with insects or snakes or for some reason underwater life.
Really?
Like it grosses me out. Like,
So I'm gonna assume you've never been in the ocean.
no, I've been in the ocean.
Oh,
Yeah. I have no problem with that. For
you just
some
don't wanna
reason,
see it.
I just don't want to see it.
Okay.
And I like, not that I was during this scenes, but to kind of throw back to what I was saying about horror movies, I definitely cannot eat while any of that kind of stuff is on.
Well, I mean, everybody has their triggers, So
So just a little side note, just a little personal insight into one of your Buffyverse Revisited hosts here.
now, were you eating at the time you saw this?
No, like I said, I wasn't eating during this, but yeah, it
Lucky.
definitely, even like I said, even not eating, it definitely like gives me an ew factor. I would much rather watch zombies ripping out and chomping down on somebody's lower intestine than watch bugs crawling all over
See like
anything.
a shrimp floating through the ocean.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's because of the perception that aquatic life is slimy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that bugs me.
Well, like I said, it bugs you.
It bugs me.
I see what you did there.
I do like seafood though too, like, so
Everybody has
weird.
triggers,
Right.
Oh.
But
Now we know yours, and I'm going to ride that like Seabiscuit.
yeah, I debated putting that out there because I know how you are. But
Oh yeah.
so we find ourselves back in the library. Buffy comes out of the stacks, and she's like, "Hey, listen to this. Mantises can rotate their heads 180 degrees." And she slams the book shut, and she's all like, "Ha!" And Willow and Giles are just kind of like, "Yeah, so big deal." And she's all like, "Come on, guys, ha! Like this is the moment." Like, and Buffy or Willow and Giles are pretty much like, I don't know, Miss French is kind of big for a bug,
Yeah.
And she's pretty woman shaped, And Buffy's like, "Listen, here's some facts. I'm gonna lay down some knowledge on you guys. The praying mantis is the only insect that can rotate its head like that. Um, a vampire was deathly afraid of Miss French. And number 3, her fashion sense screams predator."
Yeah.
So, and Willow says it's the shoulder pads. And Buffy says exactly. So Giles is like, "Well, if you're right, then she's got to be a shapeshifter or a perception distorter." And then he's like, "I used to know this guy back in Oxford who had degrees in entomology and mythology." And Buffy's like, "What now?" And Giles is like, "Bugs and fairy tales."
Yeah.
So he proceeds to tell her that, or he starts to tell her that before he went insane, he claimed that there was a beast, and Buffy interrupts her with a 911 alert because Willow's in the meantime hacked into the school attendance system or whatever.
Right.
And she's like, "Yo, Blaine's mommy called and he never came home last night."
And she tripping, bro.
Yeah. And Giles is all like, "Yo, that dude that was Miss French yesterday?" And Willow's like, "Yeah. And if Miss French is responsible and Xander's with her right now, and he's got a crush on a giant insect," and Buffy's like, "Will, like, chillax. I got this. I'll go make sure he's okay. I need you to hack onto the coroner's office, you know, and Willow wants to know what they're looking for. Buffy wants her to look up the autopsy results for Dr. Gregory. Because if Buffy's on the right track, then there's definitely going to be some bite marks on Dr. Gregory. And so Buffy turns back to Giles, and she's like, "So what about this beast your nutty friend was babbling about?" And Giles is like, um, "Well, I'll have to make a phone call to get all the details." And then he says, uh, "This computer invasion that Willow's performing on the coroner's office, one assumes it's entirely legal." And at the same time, they're like, "Yeah, of course, you know." And he's like, "Right, wasn't here, didn't see it, couldn't have stopped you."
He's like, that's probably for the best.
Right. I would like to say something that irritated me in this scene, and it's just a brief line of dialogue.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you caught it or it irritated you the same way it did me,
Okay.
is when Buffy tells Willow she needs her to hack onto the coroner's website.
Yeah. I've come to accept these types of like in the 90s. I mean, this was just such a common thing. And also with, for some reason, if you see a computer in a 90s show and any key they touch on the keyboard, it's like boop, beep, bop, boop, boop, beep,
Right.
beep, boop, boop, boop. I've just come to accept the ridiculousness of computers in the 90s and what they were supposedly capable of.
Right. And my my agitation with it didn't necessarily come from whether or not the coroner's website could be hacked. It
Mhm.
was more so the phraseology.
Yeah.
Like she said
Hacked onto it.
onto and not hack into.
Yeah.
Like that bugged the heck out of me. Like
Yeah.
it's a stupid thing, but again, like you said, you chalk it up to it's, the internet was still relatively, you know,
It was a
uh,
baby.
right, in it,
97. It was still quite a baby. I mean,
right.
I,
So
I was going to say, well, what's the likelihood that this coroner's office even
right,
is even keeping their records, quote unquote, online at this time?
right,
I mean,
right,
1997. I don't know about that,
right,
but we'll go with it for
right.
dramatic purposes.
So we then cut to outside. We're in the quad. Um, Buffy manages to catch up with Xander, and they exchange pleasantries. And she's all like, "How'd it go with Miss French?" And he's like, "It's rough being her favorite, but I'll get by." And Buffy's like, she's not what she seems. And of course, smitten Xander's like, "No, she's so much more." And Buffy is like, "All right, yeah, enough of this. Um, she's not human." And Xander's like, "Hold up, what?" And Buffy's like, "Yeah, she's like a giant bug." And Xander's not having any of it. And Buffy's like, "I know it's weird." And he's like, No." He's like, "I understand." He's like, "I met someone, you're jealous." Buffy's like, "Whoa, huh? What am I? What?" And you know, Xander just gives her this long spiel about how there's nothing he can do about it. There's just a connection between him and Miss French. Buffy's like, "Yeah, it's pheromones. I read about it."
Yeah.
Um, and she keeps trying to explain to him, and he finally, like, he's had enough of it, and he's like, "She's not a bug. She's a woman. I know it's hard to believe that a woman would find me attractive. I realize it's no mystery guy handing out leather jackets." But he's like, "What kind of girly name is Angel anyway?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And Buffy's like, "I don't. What does this have to do with it?" And Xander's like, "Nothing, but it bugs me. All right." Um, and he's like, I'm out," and he storms off.
And she's just like, what the fuck just happened?
Right, right. Which I so this is the first time I think in the 4 episodes so far that Xander has kind of almost directly given Buffy an idea of his developing crush on her,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or
He almost
whatnot.
just basically comes right out and says it.
Right. So
But I don't know. I don't understand why they play her have her play it so dumb. Like
Right.
I mean, there have been so many innuendos and
Right.
it should be so obvious. Like boys are dumb at
Right.
that age. They're not going to catch on if the roles reversed, but girls are so much more advanced and just
Right.
smart. And
Right.
she should have totally just been like, "Oh, he's got the hots for me."
Right. And it's also something that I don't know that and I could be wrong. If I am, please correct me. You
Oh, I
or you or anybody listening.
will.
I don't know that they ever adequately address this situation between Xander and Buffy.
They kind of really don't.
Like I think it
That's
eventually just kind of falls by the wayside.
Yeah, I think there just comes a point. I think once, spoiler alert, once she and Angel become basically a thing,
Mhm.
and like Xander kind of realizes how much she is in love with Angel and all that, and then I think he just kind of accepts that, like, yeah, it's never,
Right.
and also that I think he becomes, I think it comes to a point where he would much rather just be one of her best friends, as opposed to anything romantic,
Right. Right.
So
So following this little outburst by Xander, we find ourselves at Mrs. French's house that same night. She's pouring. So we head right into this. Like, she isn't even putting on any pretenses
no,
as to why Xander's there. Like, there's not even like,
it is right on Front Street.
right there. There's not even like, there's no craft supplies or the makings of paper mache eggs, even casually strewn about to give the idea that that's what's going down.
Well, let's
We
put it this way. In my notes for this scene,
Mhm.
there's a part where I put, he's clearly putty in her cleavage.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So we open and she's pouring 2 martinis. Her dress is, it's not low cut,
I want to make
but
note. I believe one is already poured, and she's pouring the second.
okay.
Which there is a purpose behind
Right.
that, I believe.
Her dress, it's not low cut, but there's a lot of cleavage showing.
Yeah,
Like,
it's your classic quote little black dress.
right. The doorbell rings, she opens it. Oh, it's Xander. She tells him to come in. He's eyes locked right on her chest.
And just really quick, let's remind everyone who might not be aware, the character Xander Harris is 16 years old.
Right.
Okay.
So obviously she sees him staring at her chest. She asked if she should change, and he's like, no. So they walk into the living room. She offers him a martini, one of the martinis, and then questions if maybe he'd like something else. He takes the drink, and she tells him, "I just need to relax around you. I'm nervous around you, but you're probably cool as a cucumber." And Xander talks about liking cucumbers.
Can I just say I've never understood that saying "cool as a cucumber," and I'll tell you why. Because my parents said it to me all the time when I was a kid, and I had a fever, and then I didn't.
Well, go ahead.
How is a cucumber any cooler than any other vegetable that you might touch?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Because I looked up the phrase.
Okay.
No, I really didn't. Okay.
Damn it. I was like, if he pulls this off, holy shit. Like, he is the greatest research guru in the history of podcasting.
I didn't look it up.
Damn.
But if you want, I will.
No.
Before the end of the episode.
But I just, that saying always annoyed me, because I'm like, how is it a cucumber any cooler to the touch than any other vegetable?
Right.
But anyway, I
What
guess
I'll
that's rhymes, cool, cucumber, you know.
right. The
phonetic.
thing is, there probably is an origin for the saying.
Probably.
Uh, I'll look it up when we're done recording, and
Okay.
we can toss it into the
We'll put it
notes
into the notes section for next week's
for
episode.
next week.
Okay.
So he's babbling, like I said, about how he likes
Or
cucumbers.
hey, I'm sorry. If everybody who's listening out there, if you know the origin of that saying or whatever, email us Buffy Revisited at gmail.com.
Yeah, 100%. Email us, tweet at us, drop us a message, a post on Facebook or a messenger message on Facebook. Slide into our DMs on TikTok.
Slide in them DMs, yo.
Whatever,
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, please. So yeah, he's stammering about liking cucumbers and Greek salad thing with yogurt. Asks her if she likes Greek food, because he likes Greek food, except shawarma. That's just a big meat hive, he says. And then he proceeds to down the martini, just one gulp, down the martini. Then she asks if she can ask him a personal question. He puts her glass down, leans in real close to him, and asks if he's ever been with a woman before. Again, there's no pretense as to what's happening here.
No.
None whatsoever. Xander, of course, being a 16-year-old boy, in the presence of a admittedly beautiful older woman, stammers, stumbles over his words. He's like, in the same room. Let me think. There've been and then he finally admits that he hasn't. And she says she knows, and that he can tell, and that she can tell, and that she likes it, but in fact she needs it. And he's like, oh, absolutely, everyone's needs should definitely be met. And we kind of hear a muffled yelling from somewhere. He acknowledges it, and she is like, I don't hear anything. So he is starting to become visibly affected by the drink.
Which was quick.
Very quick.
There was not a lot of martini in that glass.
There
I
wasn't.
noticed that it was probably less than half of it was probably like a quarter of the way full.
Right.
So, not a lot, probably a shot worth.
Right. So yeah, it hit him hard. He makes a comment about how he's in love with Buffy. And then again, he brings up hearing someone, screaming or crying, and Miss French asks if Xander would like to touch her, and we get Xander's POV to her hands on his hands, and they turn into the giant insect claws we saw from our prologue scene. And Xander says, your hands are really serrated, and then proceeds to fall unconscious. And we see the mantis claws dragging him away.
And I say he fell unconscious from drugging.
At first, earlier in the scene when he started to be affected, I was like, okay, he's 16, not a lot of experience with drinking alcohol. He downed that martini real quick. And then when he passed out so quick, I was like, no, she drugged him.
Yeah, and
she drugged him.
And I thought back, oh yeah, she already had hers made and poured, and she was pouring his into his glass when he first got there. And knocked on the door. So I was like, yeah, his is definitely drugged.
Yeah.
So next scene, Xander is waking up and he's laying on straw inside of a cage, a large cage, but a cage nonetheless, and appears to be inside of a basement of this house. So she's drug him off to the basement and locked him in a cage. He's like, what in the, he's kind of getting his bearings and everything. And he peers out of the cage, and in the distance there, he can see her. She's now full on bug lady. She now just looks like a giant praying mantis. And, she's tending to what appear to be eggs, doing something, busy work. And he's like, Miss French, and the giant mantis turns to him and in a very, monstery voice says, "Call me Natalie." And he's just like, what the fuck? So then we go from there back to the library at Sunnydale High, and Giles is talking on the phone to a woman where he has made this call to the crazy loony bin where this doctor friend of his had been committed. And I'll just go ahead and play a brief clip of the way he handles this woman on the phone. And that's not playing because I'm stupid.
Frankly, madam, I haven't the faintest idea what time it is, nor do I care. Now, unlock his cell, unstrap him, and bring him to the telephone immediately. This is a matter of life and death.
I had to play that clip. I just love when Giles gets British and angry.
Yeah.
So as we hear, he's telling her, bring him, blah, blah, blah. It's a matter of life and death. So we cut over into the main part of the library, and Will's at the computer, and she's like, bingo, got the autopsy. And she's like, oh, with color pictures. Ooh, didn't need to see that. And Buffy looks, and she's like, yep, see right there, right on the neck, the teeth marks that perfectly match the teeth marks of the blown up picture of a praying mantis mouth and teeth that she had. And she's like, it's totally a mantis killing. So, Willow's like, oh no, she could be, Willow's Xander's in danger, and blah blah blah. And they had talked about, how she had bitten off the head because that's the way praying mantis female does after mating, et cetera, et cetera. And Willow's like, no, not Xander. I like his head because that's where his eyes are and his hair and his adorable smile. And just more proof that Willow is just, I'd say it's even more than a crush. I'd say she's pretty much just totally in love with Xander.
Right.
I mean, they've been best friends since they were toddlers. So.
Right.
Buffy's like, don't worry. I saw him leave school earlier. I'm sure he's safe at home, right now. And we cut back to Xander, who's still in that cage. He's clearly not home and safe. And he's totally freaked out. He's kind of going over to the side of the cage, just like, oh, and a hand reaches and grabs him, and he freaks out, and he turns, and it's Blaine, the varsity douche. He's apparently been in this cage for a couple of days. And it's a cage. It's two cages, and that's how he's able to reach through and grab Xander. And he's like, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, Xander's like, what the hell is going on? And he's like, I don't know, man, but like she starts quaking, and then eggs start shooting out. And then, she mates. He's like, I saw it. It's gross. And he's like, we got to get out of here, man. We got to get out of here. And Xander's like, okay. I gotta, formulate a plan, basically. And we cut. That's the end of the scene.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at my notes, and I've got some more notes than what you had there, so I was a little
I
thrown
shaved-
off
I
by
shut down a lot of these scenes, just these interstitial scenes.
So we cut back to the library where Mrs. French's or Miss French's um, school record or whatever is coming out of the printer. Willow tells her that we're getting the address. To which Buffy asks, or Buffy calls to Giles, and Giles is holding up a tape recorder, and he says, "Recording bat sonar is something soothing akin to having one's teeth drilled." We should point out that in the previous scene, Buffy had sent Giles on a mission to record bat sonar from the vid library because she read that bat sonar completely disrupts Mantis's nervous system. So that's why he recorded the bat sonar. And Buffy's like, "All right."
And I think you've jumped ahead to another scene.
Did I?
Yeah, because after Xander says he was trying to, make a plan and all that, he's like, "Here, let me make my plan." And we cut back to Giles back in the library, who's now actually talking to the friend that he was trying to get the woman to put on the phone.
Oh, you know what? I think you're right.
Yeah.
Hold on. I apologize.
You should be so sorry.
I know.
Probably going to need to cut yourself now.
Okay. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. So we cut to the library, and as Jeremy said, we're on the phone. We're on that transatlantic phone call with Giles's insane buddy Carlisle. And Giles is like, "I understand. I'll take every precaution. What we're dealing with, it sounds exactly like the creature you described." He's like, "Yes, you were right all along about everything. No, not about your mom coming back as a Pekingese, but just try to get some rest. Goodbye." He hangs up the phone. Comes out of his office. Willow, and Buffy are at the computer. And Giles tells them that his friend spent years transcribing lost pre-Germanic languages, but what he discovered he had kept to himself until a couple teenage boys were murdered in the Cotswolds, and he went hunting for it. And he tells them that it was a she mantis, a creature that is a kleptes virgo, which translates to virgin thief. They appear in many cultures: the Greek sirens, Celtic sea maidens, and they all preyed on virgins. He tells them that it assumes the form of a beautiful woman and lures them back to her nest. Buffy's like, "Well, I mean, Xander's fine then. He's couldn't possibly be, a virgin." And Willow's like, "Xander's gonna die," and gets up and runs to the phone. So Buffy is prodding Giles, so it's breedings. We need to find it and kill it. How do we do that? Giles says that his friend recommended cleaving off all the body parts. So Giles or Willow gets off the phone, and she lets them know that Xander's not home, and that he had told his mom he was going over to his teacher's house to work on a science project, but didn't tell her where. So of course they all realize he's going to Miss French's. Um, so Buffy tells Willow she needs to get her address off the substitute teacher files, and she tells Giles that bats eat mantises. So when mantises hear bat sonar, it drives their entire nervous system crazy, and he needs to go into the vid library and record some bat sonar for them to use. And that's the end of that scene.
Right. That's the scene where
Yep.
he gets the sonar. Then we just cut to a quick little interstitial scene where Blaine, the varsity douche, is like, "Don't make her mad," and Xander immediately breaks a bar off from in his cell, and Blaine's just kind of like, "Wow, okay, I literally just said don't make her mad, so you break a bar off." Like, well, at least I can get out of my cell now into your cell. So well, then we cut over to back into the library. This is kind of the same scene, but it's just cuts back and forth.
And this is,
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say this is the scene I inadvertently started to go through before, where they've gathered Miss French's address.
Yeah, you go ahead and take over because you had started on this.
So they have Miss French's address from her personnel file. Giles has the bat sonar, and Buffy's like, "Let's roll," and they head out the door. As they're leaving, though, Willow says that according to Mrs. French's records, she was born in 1907, and that makes her like 90 years old. And Giles says, "and extremely well preserved."
Yeah, extremely well preserved.
You want to go ahead, Jeremy?
No, take us into the next one, because okay. I'd say this kind of
it's the same scene, but a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
So now we're back in Miss French's basement. Blaine, she's approaching, and she's looking back and forth between Xander and Blaine. And Blaine's like, "Whoa, take him. He broke the cage. It wasn't me. Take him." We cut to Giles and Buffy and Willow pulling up into Miss French's driveway in Giles's classic Citron. They get out, where they run to the door, and Giles is like, "What are you gonna do now? You can't just kick the door open." And Buffy's like, "Yeah, that'd be wrong," and gets ready to kick the door open, at which point it opens up, and there's this sweet looking old lady there.
Little old lady.
And she's all like, "Hello, I heard a noise. Are you guys selling something? Because I'm on a fixed budget, but I'll see what I can do." And they're like, "We're looking for Miss French." And she's like, "Yeah, that's me." And Buffy's like, "Natalie French, the substitute teacher?" And she's like, "Yep, I'm her. I taught for over 30 years. I retired in 1972.
1972.
And that's when they realized that our Miss French, the fake Miss French, was using the real Miss French's records to get into the school, and she could be anywhere.
Yep.
We cut back to the basement, and the giant mantis is staring between the two boys, and Xander's like, "What is she doing?" And we cut to her again, and Blaine's like, "I think it's eeny, meeny, miny," and Xander says Mo. And as Blaine's saying it, we're seeing Miss French as the giant mantis with her giant mantis claw.
And
you can hear her kind of under Blaine's going, "Eeny, meeny, miny, mo."
Yeah.
And she lands on Xander, and the camera closes in on him just looking absolutely terrified.
Yep. So he's like, fine, I'm coming. So he scoots himself along and comes out of the cage and stands up and whack hits the giant mantis with the pole that he had grabbed, and immediately runs to the steps and starts running up the steps to go out of the basement. And mantis creature grabs him by the foot, pulls him down, and he tumbles all the way down the stairs. And he's kind of dazed and hurt. He's such a goof. I mean, klutzy guy. So he's kind of out of commission now. So much for that plan. We cut back outside, where they were at the little old lady's house, the real Miss French, and Buffy's like, I'm sure she lives in this neighborhood because this is where I saw her walking home with her groceries, when Fort Guy got scared of her. I'm sure she lives, right here in this neighborhood. And Willow's like, we got to do something. I'm just going to start banging on doors. And Buffy's like, no, we don't have time for that. And an idea forms in Buffy's head. And the next thing we know, they're over at a manhole cover. She's pulling the manhole cover up, and she's jumping down into the sewer. I wonder why. Why? We'll cut back down to the basement, and Xander is tied up now, which I wondered, I wonder how Mantis Pincher pulled this one off. But, who knows? So Xander's now tied up, kind of in a crucifix type position with his hands up, and Varsity Douche seems to be kind of breaking his balls here, because he's just like, how do you like your eggs, Xander? And I'm just like, wow.
Right?
Like, you do realize you're going to be next, like, at some point, right?
Right. Like, there's being a douche, and then there's just
kind of being Charlie Manson.
Right. Like
it just seemed odd to me.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
And then he's like, what's going on? Well, what's going to happen? And then he kind of goes back to that first day in class where she's reading about the mantis, the praying mantises, about how they lay their eggs and then find a mate to fertilize them. And he kind of puts it all together in his head like, oh, fuck, that means me.
Yep.
Then what, Jane?
We cut back to the manhole cover, and Willow is yelling down. She's like, come on, Buffy. And then we cut to some bushes. They're clearly the same bushes that Buffy had moved in Weatherly Park a few nights ago. We hear Claw Guy swinging and ropes whipping through the air. And suddenly we see Buffy push Claw Guy out of the bushes, his arms tied behind his back. He's all like, you, and Buffy's like, me. And we cut to Buffy shoving him down the street. And, she's pushing him. Giles and Willow are following behind, and she's, prodding him, like, come on, where is she? Which house is it? I know you're afraid of her. What's going on? Where? And he suddenly reacts, and Buffy's like, oh, this is it? This is where it's at? Okay. So she lets go of him, and he, in the meantime, has cut the ropes with his claw hand. He attacks Buffy. She leans out of the way, trips, and falls backward over a miniature picket fence. Claw Guy jumps after her. Buffy crawls backwards until she hits the fence on the other side of the lawn, rips a picket from it, and jams it into Claw Guy as he takes another swing at her, and he falls over dead. And we cut to Giles breathing a sigh of relief.
And I've noted this is the second vampire who's been staked in this episode who did not dust.
Yes. Yeah. Well, kind of a side note, it was something I found out researching for the premiere episode. The whole idea behind vampires dusting was uh, it was too expensive in the beginning, so that's why you don't see it a lot in the beginning.
So you only see it a little because we saw it in. I know we saw it in The Harvest,
Right.
and I think we saw it in Welcome to the Hellmouth.
I think so.
But then we didn't see it. Yeah, we haven't seen it since then. We didn't, and we don't see it in this episode.
Right. Well, and actually, we didn't see it in The Harvest. Well, we did when she staked Luke, but when she staked the other vampires, it was always off screen, or like this.
You might hear the sound, but
right, or like this, she staked him and he fell off screen.
Yeah.
So yeah, apparently that effect was too costly in the beginning, so that's why we didn't see it a lot.
Makes sense, you know.
Something else I would like to point out about this scene is that Buffy tells Willow, you know, we don't have time to knock on doors in Natalie's neighborhood, but she somehow thinks they have enough time for her to go into the sewers and track down this clawed vampire in Sunnydale's apparently vast underground tunnel system.
Yeah.
To get him to lead them to Miss French.
And what would have hurt if she'd have just been like, okay, hey, you start go banging on doors. I'm gonna go down in the sewer and find Fort Guy while you're banging on doors, you know.
Right, like there's 3 of them.
Yeah.
Like at the very least, Giles and Willow go start knocking on doors.
Yeah, Giles go one way, Willow go the other. I'm going down in the sewer.
Right. I'm gonna go track this dude down.
Yeah.
The only way I can reconcile her thought process is that she knew the manhole cover that he went into.
Yes,
and she knows the cave in Weatherly Park where she found him.
Right.
So that narrows
but
it down.
But still, he could have been anywhere in that sewer
exactly.
System, you know?
Exactly.
Or not even down in the sewers. He could have been, because it was nighttime. He could have been out and about feeding.
Right. 100%.
Poor writing.
Yeah. So we're back in Natalie's basement now, and she is advancing on Xander, hovering over him, and you hear her saying, kiss me, and Xander's, think what this does to my bug trigger.
Yeah, you got triggered hard here, buddy.
And Xander's squirming and yelling, and he's like, can I just say one thing? And he screams help. And he the desperation in Xander's voice, I sympathize. Fine acting by Nicholas Brendan here.
The pain is real.
At that point, Buffy smashes through the basement window, slides in. Blaine, of course, is being the Blaine we've come to expect, and he's like, hey, over here in the cage.
You know, him, save me.
Right.
Even though I'm perfectly safe and fine right now, and he's about to be eaten.
Right. So Buffy yells to Natalie to let Xander go as she's pulling her bag through the window. She I lost my place. She runs down the stairs, drops the bag. Willow climbs in the window behind her. Buffy is now spraying Natalie in the face with 2 cans of bug spray.
Yep.
I thought was hilarious.
I loved that touch.
Giles now climbs in the window as Willow advances to behind Buffy and opens the cage. The spray's working. It's at very least disorienting Natalie. And Buffy's down there with them now, or Giles is down there with them now. and Buffy tells him to get the others out of there. Buffy pulls out the tape recorder and the machete from her bag as Giles is undoing the straps holding Xander. Natalie's retreating back towards her nest. Buffy's closing in on her. And Buffy's like, remember how you ate Dr. Gregory's head? Well, he taught me if you do your homework, you learn stuff. Like what happens to your nervous system when you hear this. And she turns on the tape recorder and it's Giles's voice.
Reciting some kind of nonsense.
Right, about how it's important to file things alphabetically.
Yeah.
Buffy looks back and like gives Giles an incredulous look, and Buffy's like, it's the wrong side. At which point Natalie knocks the tape recorder and the machete out of Buffy's hands. Giles watches the tape recorder like fly past him and hit the ground and slide under the refrigerator. He scrambles over to get it. Buffy, in the meantime, is fighting Natalie. Natalie tries to trip her. Buffy jumps over it. Xander appears next to Buffy with a can of bug spray and starts spraying Natalie in the face with it, at which point Buffy pushes him out of the way because he's in danger. Natalie takes that opportunity to knock Buffy down. She raises, Buffy gets up on her hands and does a crouching kick. To kind of keep Natalie from closing in. She sees the machete on the floor and grabs it, at which point Giles has found the tape recorder, and he plays the tape, which is a sound of bat sonar, and Natalie starts to flail around, like obviously infected by the sound of the bat sonar. And she starts slashing at Natalie repeatedly, just hacking her to pieces. And Buffy's winded. Giles gets up. Willow runs over to Xander. Blaine's finally out of the cage, and they're just kind of looking over on all the carnage that was previously Miss French, the giant mantis.
She's been chop sueyed.
Yes. And so they're talking. Xander basically apologizes for not listening to Buffy, and thanks them for saving him. Blaine says, yeah, really, they like, me too, thank you. And Willow is like, I'm glad you're okay. And then she's like, it's unfair how she was only going after virgins. And Xander laughs nervously, and he kind of looks between them. He's like, what? And Willow's like, no, it's great. You guys are doing the right thing. And, a lot of boys your age. And Blaine cuts her off, and he's like, whoa, I'm not, a virgin. And Giles is like, well, that's the she-mantis's modus operandi. She only preys on the pure. And Blaine's like, well, my dad's a lawyer, so if anyone repeats this, they're going to be facing a lawsuit. And Xander picks up the machete and goes over to Natalie's nest and starts hacking away at all of the eggs that were left behind.
Clearly taking out his frustrations on the nest.
Right. Before you do the next scene, I would like to jump in with a little science-y bit of information here.
Okay, science me.
Bat sonar does not, at least anywhere I could find, does not cause a mantis's nervous system to like completely wig out like that. If anything, bat sonar is a disadvantage to a bat in the case of mantises, because a mantis can perceive the increased rate of ultrasonic pulses that a bat sonar is putting out, which enables them to dodge a bat's attack before the bat is able to get to them.
That makes sense. I mean, it's like
So,
playing a siren,
right.
Hear 'em coming.
Right. So, scientifically speaking, this isn't accurate.
I am thoroughly shocked by that they made something up.
Right? It's astounding.
Wow. That's all I can say. Buffy writers, wow. Oh, but anyway, so we wrap this episode up in the bronze. It's that goofy 90s alternative band again playing and everything, and Buffy's sitting at the bar, wearing the leather jacket that Angel had given to her earlier. And who shows up but Angel? And I got a little clip here I'll play of a bit of their conversation.
I heard a rumor there was one less vampire walking around, making a nuisance of himself.
There is. Guess I should thank you for the tip.
Pleasure's mine.
Of course, it would make things easier if I knew how to get in touch with you.
I'll be around.
Or who you were.
Yeah, so still not forthcoming with the information, mysterious Angel boy. And, she's like, okay, fine. She's like, well, do you want your jacket? And he's like, nah, it looks better on you. And slinks away with his pimpness. And she's like, oh my God. So she's totally smitten by him now with his 90s allure and all of his hair gel.
Yeah, I firmly believe it was the leather jacket and white wife beater combo from earlier in the episode that really cemented it for our girl.
Had to be the wife beater.
Yeah, 100%.
And so then the final scene, we cut back to school the next day. Well, what's presumably the next day, could be the next week. And there's a new science teacher, and he's a hell of a drag. He's clearly just a by the book, kind of just rancid bastard that I'm sure we've all had a teacher like that, at least one. I know I have. So Buffy's just kind of like, that sucks. And then class ends, and as she's leaving, she sees Dr. Gregory's glasses still sitting there, and which I thought, why? But okay.
Right. There are no janitors.
Did no one even change anything in this room at all? Because she picks them up and looks at them kind of sadly, and then she goes over to what appears to be a closet, and there's a coat hanging there, and she places the glasses back. So apparently his glasses and his coat are still in his classroom.
Right.
So she places the glasses into the coat, and as the camera kind of goes forward, like inside of this closet, and it starts to pan down the shelves when we get to the bottom shelf. And what do we see underneath the bottom shelf?
Some eggs.
Some mantis eggs.
And one hatches.
And that's the end of the episode.
That is the end of our episode.
Well, James, what do you say we rate this bitch?
Do you want to rate and review and discuss?
Yeah, I think we rate it, and then we just give our overall thoughts after that.
And then jump into our tidbits, our extras.
Absolutely.
All right. This pains me a little bit.
Okay.
I've been generous with the first 3 episodes. This is a 1.5 for me.
Whoa!
I
did not see that coming.
I said it last week. I was bored watching The Witch.
I was very bored with The Witch.
Yeah. This episode, I didn't like it. I don't think it added anything worthwhile outside of the idea that now you've got like, ancient bug people or whatever, that might be a threat. Yeah, we learned information about Xander and Willow, their Xander's middle name and Willow's last name. But I don't think it added anything overall. I think the Angel stuff was tacked on. It wasn't relevant to anything. I don't I feel like it was just there. I feel like the writers were like, oh, we didn't have Buffy's potential love interest skulking about in last week's episode, so we need to throw him in here somehow, somewhere. Especially, so at this point, Angel is very much like a doomsayer, if you will.
Yeah.
Like he shows up when shit's about to get really bad and really real.
And he doesn't offer much in the way of actual help.
Right. And he shows up this time because there's a vampire with a claw.
With a fork?
Right. Like, come on. No. Like, I think it was poor use of the character as we know him at this point, to really do nothing.
Yeah.
And as much as we talked about the first two episodes and the third, Buffy hitting the ground running as far as knowing what it wants to be as a show, I don't necessarily think this episode falters in that direction, but they haven't figured out yet how to do long form storytelling like they want to do in a way that gives you standalone monster of the week episodes like this, but still involves the overall season long story arc.
Okay.
And this episode is an example of that and suffers for that, in my opinion.
Okay.
So that's
tell us how you really feel. Were you done?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to be nearly as in depth. I can tell you, I give this episode a 3. To me, it's one of those just goofy fun episodes. Like there's not a lot. It's not dialogue heavy, which last week was very dialogue heavy, and I think that's one of the things that I was just like,
right.
It's not dialogue heavy. It moves pretty quickly. The episode, moved very quickly, I felt. Like you said, there's not anything of dire consequence in here to learn. I just think it's one of those, fun, quick flowing bad guy of the week episodes. A classic season 1 episode, I would call it. Vastly superior to The Witch from last week, in my opinion. Vastly superior. Oh, The Witch was just horrible. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts on it. I think it was just a very simple, basic monster of the week episode, and nothing was really, no big storyline was serviced or anything, but it, they can't all be winners, I guess.
No, that's true. And I think, and again, it's the first season. They're still to a certain degree trying to find themselves.
Yeah.
But I think in later seasons they do a much better job of tying your standalone monster of the week episodes into the overall
Oh yes.
story.
Oh yes. They get
So,
much better at it. Oh yeah.
but yeah. So that's a combined score of what, 4.5
4.5. Yeah.
between the two of us.
hmm
Right.
I mean, like I said, definitely not an episode you can't miss.
Right.
But fun for what it was.
All right.
Talk about some goofs, some gaffes, some deleted scenes. First of all, how about the body count?
Okay, we can do
Is our
the body count. First off the bat here, our body count this week is 5.
I think it's the largest body count of any episode so far, is it not?
Nope.
Hey, I'm wrong, and that's okay. I have to be wrong.
The harvest had 8.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I believe your exact quote was, "That's serial killer territory." If it was
Well,
one person.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, we had well, I guess it's arguable as to whether or not this one counts. We have the vampire staked by Xander in his daydream.
It's still a body that what we see on screen. So
We have Dr. Stephen Gregory decapitated by the she mantis. We have our unidentified homeless man killed by Fork Guy in the park. We have Fork Guy staked by Buffy. And then we have our villain of the week herself.
the she mantis.
The she mantis. Speaking of she mantis, I kind of want to where it applies, and it does this week. A little, I guess, monsterology, I would call it. So, and please interject, Jeremy. To me, this took a lot of inspiration from 1950 early 60s B movie, bigger than normal bug horror type movies.
That was definitely hot back then.
Our obviously example would be the Deadly Mantis, which was about a giant mantis. The Giant Locust movie, Beginning of the End, and then probably maybe most infamously Them, which was about giant ants. So I think it took a lot of inspiration from that. But also, it's not really common to see them as this type of horror monster. Typically, we see human-sized insects as aliens in other sci-fi shows.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like horror-inspired monsters like this was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was just kind of like as I was watching it, I thought about that as a little bit of a mashup between those two horror insect story utilizations.
Absolutely.
Are you a fan of those kind of movies? Those old school B movies?
Yeah, mainly the space ones, like any type of like really cheesy, 1950s, early 60s space stuff.
Right.
Not so much the horror ones, but definitely the really cheesy space ones with like really horrible cheesy like ray guns and terrible flying saucers through this. I love that stuff.
Gotcha.
So.
I'm a big fan of, and I can't find it to stream anywhere. There was a movie, I believe it came out sometime in the 70s. I would have to look it up, but it's called Night of the Lepus, and it's about giant killer rabbits.
Oh, okay. That sounds like something Kevin Smith might have written.
But it's totally in the vein of those 50s giant, insect monster type movies, tarantula and all those kind of things. Anyway, so we'll do some behind the scenes and trivia. The the puppet of the she mantis in this episode was actually a reused prop from Babylon 5.
Yep.
For the character Engrath. Am I pronouncing that right?
You are.
Okay. I'm ashamed to admit, nerd ashamed, that I never watched Babylon 5.
Oh, it's such a good show.
I'm not a huge fan of that type of sci-fi show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I like Star Trek and Star
Sure.
Wars, but beyond that, I've never really gotten into like spacefaring sci-fi
That type of sci-fi, yeah.
type shows. But
Yeah.
uh, and that was created by Optic Nerve Studios, I believe. That puppet. And talking about the scene where she had to eat the bugs, Musetta Vander said that they were actually real bugs, little crickets that were used for fishing, and they were kept just like in the scene in little boxes that would then get sprinkled onto her bread, and she said she recalled having a really hard time having to do that because she didn't want to feel their little wings in her mouth.
Wait,
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Why? Because there was a clear cut from when she folded the bread and then why would they have her eat the real? That's so dumb. That just sounds like something dickhead Joss Whedon decided to do to fuck with the guest of the week.
Well, and I deliberately stopped where I did because she then went on to say that when she actually bit the bread, there were no crickets in the area that she was biting.
Yeah, I don't care. That's just that I would say you are on your. Are you off your fucking meds? You think I'm gonna? This is the movie. This is television. I don't need to eat these bugs, and I'm not going to eat these bugs. You psychopath.
Let's see, what else do we have here?
I've got a little behind the scenes tidbit to share.
Okay.
The little old lady,
Mm-hmm.
the real Miss French,
right?
Her name's Jean Spiegel Howard. She's actually Ron Howard's mother.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And her husband, Ron Howard's father, his name's Rance Howard. He actually appears on Angel.
Okay.
I just thought it was an interesting little.
That is interesting. That is. Musetta Vander played Sindel in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, which also starred Brian Thompson, Luke, from our two-part series premiere, Welcome to the Hellmouth, and The Harvest.
Jawbone himself.
And this is our last little fact, and I saved it for last because it's a little bit upsetting. Again, Musetta Vander jumped at the chance to play a villain on the show because she was a huge fan of the 1992 movie.
Really?
Yes.
So it did have one fan in the whole world.
I have to tell you, I did receive some feedback regarding my vicious attack of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie from 1992. Yes.
And were you lambasted for that?
Not lambasted, but I was told that it is in fact a good movie. Awesome, in fact. So, but
is the person you were talking to mentally?
No, I'm gonna need you to stop. It was,
Okay.
it was
Okay.
it was my boss.
Oh. Now, no, here's the thing. Like, it could totally be one of those, like so bad it's good movies, and like it's,
Right.
a cult classic. Oh, this movie's so bad it's good. Like, I get that totally.
Right.
I totally get that. But like, yeah. So anyway, let's move on.
Right. Listen, I would like to go on record right now saying if you are a fan of the 1992 movie that started it all, that's fine.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
To each their own. I
just don't think that's a very popular opinion within the Buffy
Right.
fandom community,
Right.
but interesting nonetheless.
Right.
There
was that kind of does it for like behind the scenes or trivia, unless you have anything.
I have one other one that I wanted to share.
Okay.
Dr. Gregory, the character that we all know who that is. We've just went through all this. He is actually the first member of the Sunnydale High faculty to die.
Yes.
But
yes.
We know that's going to be a pretty random, pretty often occurrence as the show moves along.
And actually, from here it escalates pretty quickly.
Yeah, he has the distinction of being the first.
Right. I did come across a bit of deleted dialogue. So, in the scene outside the school, when Buffy is telling Giles about Angel's warning about Fort Guy, before Giles leaves, they briefly comment on the weather, and Giles looks around and he says something to the effect of, "It's always the same here," and Buffy's like, sunny and bright, how terrible, or something to that effect. So apparently there was a edited piece of dialogue that they were going to use in case it happened to be raining the day they were shooting. And Giles was going to look around and say, "Reminds me of home," to which Buffy would have responded, "Dark, dank, dreary. You must be so happy."
Yeah. England.
So.
Well, any final thoughts, James, on this? This clearly your favorite episode of all time.
Right. I mean, I'm sure I dislike other episodes much, much more than I dislike this one.
Yeah.
But so far, of the first season thus far, this is definitely one I could do without. But
which is like how I feel about the witch. It could just not exist, and I would be perfectly okay with that.
Right.
All right. Well, I just want to throw out some things, some little ending show tidbits here. You can visit us at buffyrevisited.com. Email us at buffyrevisited@gmail.com. Our Facebook is facebook.com/Slade Podcast. The Twitter is twitter.com/Slade Podcast. What's the Instagram, James?
We actually don't have an Instagram.
Okay. I'm sorry. Am I forgetting anything we do have?
We have a TikTok, which is also at Slade Podcast.
Okay.
We don't have an Instagram right now, solely for.
I doubt we really need it, to be honest.
Right. It's solely for continuity purposes. At all our other socials, we managed to get at Slade Podcast. That's not available on Instagram.
Well, then Instagram can kiss our asses.
And that was kind of my take on it. I would like all our socials to kind of be in line. As far as how easy they are to find.
Yeah.
But yeah.
YouTube is youtube.com. How's it go? /user/
So your best bet on YouTube is going to be just to type in Slade the Buffyverse Revisited.
Find it, then subscribe to it.
And find it and subscribe it. Because I might just be missing it, but right now our YouTube URL to the podcast site is just a bunch of numbers and letters.
Yeah.
So, but
okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I just want to tell everybody, Subscribe /like/rate us on everything and anything. If you like what we're doing. If not, okay.
Right. If you don't like it, like honestly, let us know that too.
Yeah,
know?
tell us what you what you don't like or what you think we should do different or whatever, and
Right.
take it under advisement.
Right. Like we said at the beginning of the podcast today, this is new to both of us. We're learning. We're trying to adjust accordingly.
And having a blast doing it.
Right. Yeah. So.
And with all that said, thank you for joining us this week. I've been one of your hosts. I'm Jeremy.
I'm James. Thanks for listening.
And we will see you next week. Ta-ta.